episode of 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm joined by Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
What's happening?
Not an awful lot, mate. Well, no, stop the presses. Abada has downed tools at Celtic. Well, it entirely depends who you listen to. Either that, or he's got his eye on another move, or if it's his ex-president of his last club, he's turned down a new contract and he wants to play his football in England. Rumours are rife that he's going to join Southampton in the summer for an 8-figure sum. And I think it's fair to say opinion is split on it.
Yeah, we're seeing the usual pattern with these things. These things are quite identifiable now as a pattern with Celtic's recent transfers out, because it happened with Giakoumakis and Juranovic. Both of those guys eventually went. There was plenty of fire behind the smoke on those rumours as well. So Abada appears to be the latest one. He himself made some cryptic comments in the press recently about how things are happening behind the scenes, and that's why he's not getting so many starts. At all times, you're dealing with kind of
nudges, winks, innuendos, reading between the lines.
Exactly, but I think it's clear that this is a kind of cycle with Celtic now. They bring players in, use them for a season, maybe 2 seasons, try and probably shift them on. And we can get into the various debates on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I think what we're seeing is exactly what Ange told us very recently, was at the AGM, about how they're going to be a lot more aggressive, a lot more mobile, a lot more agile in the transfer market. And I think we're finally seeing that. It is still tough for fans to take, because at all times we are suspicious of players who have ambitions outside of Scotland, and or if Celtic want to move players on, we don't really like that. We're not really used to it, but in fairness, Ange has been preparing us for this for quite some time now.
I think it's because, Melly, in this particular case with Abada, I can kind of understand why people are upset, because he's not really what you can consider broken through at Celtic. You know what I mean? He's still very much a sub. He's not fulfilled. You wouldn't expect him to fulfil his entire potential at Celtic if he is a player that we're going to move on. But I don't think he's even reached close to his potential at Celtic, and it seems like another early move. I, on the other hand, think we may have seen the best of Abada. I think he's probably closer to his ceiling than other people might think he is. And if we're going to get a strong offer, like 10 million for him, I think it's good business, especially if it lets us keep other players in the team, sign other players onto bigger contracts, or bring in better players.
Yeah, I think with Abada, it's a strange one. Like, he was he a second top goal scorer last season? He is
probably is again now,
right now the second top goal scorer, but it's not a move I'm too worried about, because I just think
he's a bit of an enigma as a player, isn't he?
He definitely is. Like, we see the best and worst of him in every single game. He will take a chance, he will be in there and he will sniff out the chances, but like he did at the weekend there, running through one-on-one, and he trips over himself. So there is that. He is that instinctive player where he scores goals when he doesn't have time to think about it. Give him time to think about it, he'll put a cross straight into the keeper's arms, or he'll just let the ball roll away from him. So it's one of those guys, if I said a couple of weeks ago, if you're looking at MD in the squad to sell, he'd be the first one I'd go to, because I think with Maeda and Jota, they're on 2 main wingers, and then I'd have HAKSABANOVIC after that. And if Celtic can sell Abada for decent money, bring in another winger and maybe a couple other players, I think that would really enhance the squad. But it is a lot of goals to take out the team. Going on from last season where we lost Tom Rogic, brought in Adam Moy, he has brought goals and assists, but if you're taking out Rogic, then Abada, we need to make sure that we're taking players out the team like Juranovic, Giakoumakis, Abada. Yes, they're not playing every single week. They have to be replaced adequately. That's happened so far, but I think once we get to the summer, we're at the point now where it needs to be bringing in players that go into the first team rather than guys that can contribute and will contribute. I think there needs to be guys coming in that are going to be, right, Abada's gone, this guy's definitely going to start ahead of him.
It's not unusual nowadays, is it, Steve, for clubs to pay, or English clubs to pay, what we would consider big money for players that haven't played necessarily a lot of football. We saw at Rangers, they sold a right back down south, didn't they, for a lot of money, and we're seeing the sort of same thing with Abada. And is it just a symptom of the fact that £10 million is really nothing to an English Premier League club? Now we look at it like, wow, that's great money, getting this money in. Whereas with them, it almost represents almost no risk at all.
I suppose, loosely talking, just off the top of my head, it might be the equivalent of us taking a punt on an 800 grand player in the off chance, or someone who has proven himself at a decent level for us, say that a guy from like the Israeli league, for example, we pay 800 grand, 1 million for him, bring him in. That's kind of the equivalent of like a Southampton or a Brentford or whatever, any of the Fulham, any of these clubs just taking a 10 million punt on a player. I mean, they'll have done their homework on him. That's why he'll have not played as much football as you might have expected, but they still are aware of him. Abada remains an incredibly difficult case to sum up as well, because we do talk about him, and you have to acknowledge the outstanding contribution he's made. Melly, you've already talked about the goals and the assists and all that, so you can't just simply say, put that to one side and just say sell him, because it is a difficult one. But I think with Abada, I think we could probably improve upon Abada.
Yes.
You might not get that level of goals, but I think you might get someone a wee bit suited. I all of a sudden noticed very recently that it's quite unusual for a club like Celtic to have no left-sided options for the right wing. All of our right wingers are right-footed, and that's quite unusual in itself in this day and age. Most wingers play on their opposite side, depending on system, of course, but I think you might maybe see an option like that come in, a left-sided right winger.
How do you think we're served on the right-hand side of the pitch, generally?
No,
compared to the left, even?
Well, less so than the left, but I think Jota does well. I think Jota is the best option for the right wing, but I think he's probably better suited to the left. I've said before, I think he's our best winger on both sides, but he can't play both at the same time, so you have to just squeeze him in and worry about
he needs to work hard.
Yeah. I know, not with that attitude, he can't play both sides. But Abada, you said, Jamie, something about how he's probably closer to his ceiling than people might think as well, and I've been wondering if wondering about that recently as well. I think that people say that he's got a lot of potential, which he undoubtedly has, because he's only 21 years old, but I think that people sometimes look at that the wrong way. They imagine that this guy at 21 years old is going to be completely unrecognisable from the player he is when he hits 25. That doesn't tend to be how it works. You're pretty much most of the player you're going to be at 21, but with fine tuning. Could anyone honestly sit here and say that Odsonne Edouard, Christopher Ayer, Kieran Tierney are all completely different players now to what they were when they were 20, 21?
Well, no, it's a point I've made before. Like, there's this assumption, take for instance John McGinn, that he was playing for HIBS 1 minute, effectively, and then some weeks later he's playing for Aston Villa, and then the Scottish press in particular speak about his performances at Aston Villa as, oh look, he's come on leaps and bounds since joining Aston Villa. No, he was maybe always that good. He's marginally improved in the year or so that he's been at Aston Villa, but he had that potential. But just playing for and this is a point we'll probably come on to later, just because you pull on the strip of an English Premier League club doesn't immediately make you a much better footballer. And
just because you're 21 doesn't mean you're going to get better at 25. That's potential means it's possible that it happens. You have indications that it might happen, but how many players have we had over the years, decades even, who looked great at 20, 21 and simply never fulfilled that potential? It happens more often than it happens in the reverse more often than these players explode into life when they're 25. That doesn't happen that often. So, I fully appreciate that he could get much, much better. But Abada is lacking some key fundamentals for me.
This is what I was going to put on Melly here. So, Melly, I want you to play the role of an English scout. Oh my God. It's the Sean Connery retainer I've got in. I want you to play the role of an English scout, and I want you to look at Abada and say, well, okay, so what he needs to improve on is X, but what he already has is Y, because he's got good instincts, but he's got okay pace, but there seems to be more on the needs to improve on column than stuff that he's already got sorted.
Yeah, he's the opposite to a usual up and coming winger. If you take, for example, Forrest and McGeady that have came through at Celtic, had all the tricks, the pace, could get to the byline and put in a cross, but didn't have that end product for a couple of seasons. Whereas Abada's got the sort of end product in that he is always in areas where he'll score goals. But if you give him the ball and want him to beat a man and put a ball into the box, which young wingers usually do, can he do it? So if I was a scout, I'd be looking at him going, he scores goals, but apart from that...
You're a Scottish scout.
Apart from that, he doesn't do much. So that's maybe a bit harsh, but if you're at Celtic and you get a lot of the ball and you're playing against teams who are on the back foot and you're trying to take them on and you can't do it, you're not going to then go to England and all of a sudden be able to do it. But if he is playing for a team down in the sort of bottom half where they're playing on the break, then maybe Southampton think, well, if we're on the break, he gets one or two chances, he's going to score, he's going to be effective. He's not the And it's again like we were talking about, we brought him in last season. If Celtic had have had a different season, and say it was this season and Abada was one of the options to buy, I don't think Celtic would have bought him. I think last season we were in a bit of a state where we thought, right, we need to get players in. I think with Abada, what the first or second signing, first signing possibly under Ange. So he came in and he just didn't look like the winger that we were told Ange was going to use. He likes wingers on the touchline that hug the touchline, take players on and get balls across. That's not Abada's game, but he does have skills that are really, really good in the fact that he scores goals and finishes chances. He's done that from his first game to right up to now. So it's a different one for Celtic, but I think if we can get a decent offer, I would definitely take it. But then I'm looking at it and going, right, if I can see these flaws in his game, then scouts are definitely going to see it.
Because potential must be such a weird and difficult thing to judge as a football team. Like, you could look at Abada and go, right, he's 21. With a bit of change in diet and nutrition, we can maybe put on some muscle there. He could probably handle himself a wee bit better. But if you've got a player like Abada who, and I don't think we're being unfair and we'll get lots of comments about this, but who really struggles to complete crosses, to use the proper term, can you teach a 21-year-old to cross the ball? Or are Southampton looking at him the way that some clubs do? Probably the most famous recent example involving Celtic was Timo Pukki, where Norwich looked at exactly the type of chance they create and exactly the type of chance that he scored and went, well, we're creating a lot of that type of chances. There's a guy that can score a lot of type of chances. Or Southampton looking at it from a more tactical perspective, going, well, we actually need a winger who can sniff out chances at the back post. We don't need somebody to take them on because our fullback can do that. We just need somebody contributing in these different ways.
Yeah, I suppose clubs might look upon him in quite a fair comparison, I think, to somebody like Raheem Sterling, because we've made the comparison before. He could play like that. He could play that role. Raheem Sterling essentially has all the shortcomings that Abada does, albeit at a higher level, and he's transferred for upwards of 50 million twice, right? So but I'm talking about just scaling down slightly. He is a guy who doesn't really dribble, isn't all that fast anymore, can't really pass the ball, looks very, very awkward, touch doesn't look great at times, but see that drifting in at the back post and finishing off chances. Raheem Sterling was excellent at that for a couple of seasons, particularly under Pep Guardiola at Man City. So could he perform that role for a club like Southampton? And Southampton are just the example at hand. That's been the strongly rumoured team that he's been linked with. So I couldn't really speculate any further on that until I would know where he's going, because it will depend on the coach he goes and plays for, what role he's there to suit. But potential is very hard to judge. Previously, you've heard people like Arsene Wenger saying if a player doesn't have it at 14 or 15, he's never going to have it when it comes to the basics, when it comes to first touch, when it comes to passing and all that. You've got it from a very early age. Can you teach a 21-year-old how to do it? Probably not, but you can fine-tune things. You can mould a player who has the obvious talents that Abada does into a very, very useful player. It's just maybe not what we expect of a Celtic winger. And see on what selling him potentially means to Celtic. You said that if we get to keep other players for longer, all for that, because for too long, this is another thing we probably need to get used to, or rather sort of get over the trauma of for a few years. For a long time, we as supporters were told that basically we either have to qualify for the Champions League every year, which we didn't do for several years in a row, or we have to sell our best player basically every single summer. See if selling these sort of second-tier Celtic players like Giakoumakis and Abada, I don't mean to be disrespectful to these guys because they've been big contributors, but they're a notch well below Kyogo, Carter-Vickers, Hatate and all that. See if we can keep the top tier because we're generating a steady profit on the guys just under that. I'm all for that. All for it. Don't get me wrong, we will not keep those players forever either, but we are not in the previous situation we were in where we were desperate to sell them. We had to take the first bid that came in for these guys previously because we wouldn't qualify for the Champions League.
It's quite remarkable how the transfer model that Celtic are operating now has moved faster than we've been able to keep up with it, even us on the podcast, because what's been shown in the past is as Celtic sell a player, we've got replacements in before they leave. So before, like you say, Stephen, that trauma, as you put it, we don't really have the trust. We would sell Abada. We think maybe James Forrest is going to leave in the summer. We're going to be underserved on the right hand side, that we're tearing our hair out, but maybe we should be a bit more relaxed because there's been a complete change in how we do transfer business.
Oh, there has. It's great. I absolutely love it, and I've got faith that Celtic will go out and get another player. And the good thing about that is, yes, it's Ange Postecoglou who's the manager, but it just shows that if you have, and it's what we kind of wanted with the director of football, but if you have a manager in who has a distinct style of play, a way of playing, and knows what players he wants, it's so much easier to go out and get them. Unlike the Neil Lennon, well, I can play him, I can play with him, we'll 3-5-2, just, what is it you called a bric-a-brac? He used to build a team out of bric-a-brac. So if we know what we're looking for, we can go out and get players and replace them. And what we're seeing now is, like, again, with the Brendan Rodgers, we got sort of told that we weren't finding the players of quality for him. We're spending less than Rodgers did, and we're bringing in better players.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do wonder how often we can pull off the Alistair Johnson trick, where a player leaves and then somebody comes in that's just better. Giakoumakis leaves and O comes in, and he's maybe not as good as Giakoumakis, but he's contributing in the same ways as Giakoumakis. It's just how you wonder, like, can we seriously pull this trick off every single time?
No, it's
probably not.
It's never going to work out. We've already had Scales, Ideguchi, McCarthy.
Yeah.
It's not worked out. Still time to see if O's going to work out. He's looking good so far, but if Celtic are doing their due diligence, and it looks like they are now, because they're dishing out 5-year deals for a lot of these guys, so it's not as if they're going to dish out a big contract like that if they haven't thought, like, this guy's got potential, we are either going to keep this very good player or sell him on in a season or two. And it's just football now. Players, there's no longevity at many teams. I'd even argue if a player comes in at Celtic and stays for a long time, it's probably because he's not good enough to move on to another team, and that's not the kind of player you want. You get, like, Scott Brown's a long time ago now, he signed for Celtic. There's not going to be a lot of those players unless maybe they are Scottish based or come through at Celtic, so we need to be used to bringing in, turning over and doing that, because I always say it, like, we've had so many players in the past that were linked with big moves, you're like, oh, please don't go. And the players just didn't turn out the way they were meant to be. Abada's in a hot streak now, maybe a bit more than a hot streak because he's doing it so long, but Celtic can sell him. I don't think it's inconceivable we get a decent enough player to replace him.
We do need to sort of keep an eye on it a wee bit though, don't we? Because you can't do this with 4 or 5 players that start almost every week. You have to sort of kind of cherry pick 1 or 2 to sell in the summer. We can't have an exodus every 2 years and have to rebuild the team every 2 years. You need core players. You need to be able to tie players down and say, right, okay, in the summer we can't afford to lose Hart, Carter Vickers, Abada, and get an offer in for Jota. We can't go that far with it.
No. Just when you look at it as well, last season we brought in 4 players in January. This season we brought in 3 players in January, and the 3 players we brought in January all contributing to the team. Yes, Iwata was injured at the weekend, but the other guys, like even Iwata as well recently, they've all been playing, either starting or coming on and making was it impactors that Mikel Arteta calls them. So these guys are all contributing to the team. So the bull hockey, I would nearly swore there, I tried not to.
So you made up a word?
Bull hockey.
Bull hockey. Should have sworn. Right.
So what
the bull hockey, God, another meme.
Say that
There's
again.
another meme. I can say that's up there with agents and that. Oh my goodness.
what I say around my niece when I try to swear. Instead of the what was it, Peter Law, January's important but it's difficult to get players in, that doesn't exist anymore. So Celtic are bringing in players not just in the summer but January with a view to the end of the season and the next season. So if we can refresh every season, like we brought in 3 or 4 players in the summer, we brought in 3 players in January.
Yeah, but those 3 players that have come in January, Stephen, are not direct replacements for the guys who we pick as the best in the team every week. You know, they're not, you know, Kobayashi's not come in and we've not looked at him and went, you know what, he could really replace Carter Vickers or even Starfelt. And the point I was making was, whilst I'm...
Forgot about Kobayashi.
Whilst I'm involved in this, or whilst I'm supportive rather of this idea of, you know, recycling the squad, it has to kind of go somewhere, doesn't it? You have to do it with a view to improving. You can't just do it to stay still.
No, of course not. But what I would say about that is not in Abada's case, because it'd be very difficult to go significantly younger than Abada. You're not going to sell a 21-year-old and bring in a 13-year-old in order, because that's kind of what they've done with Giakoumakis to saved 7 years and effectively replaced the player.
Yeah.
So I do get that we're trying to kind of bring the overall age of the squad down from what it was in the title win team of last year, because Ange said that last year was all about getting experienced guys in the right positions and getting the job done. Now it's time to sort of develop on that. But it is a risk. It holds inherently huge risk to just keep turning over players and bringing more in. you increase the risk of players not adapting properly, not just not working out. In fact, so because we've had a couple already. Thankfully, it has had no impact on the team whatsoever. The Ideguchi and the ones you named, Melly, I've forgotten about them already.
Scales and
They're so insignificant that I've forgotten about them 45 seconds later. But that's had no impact on us whatsoever. Some of the most forgettable signings we've had in recent years, Ideguchi, McCarthy, Scales and all that, they've done absolutely nothing. But it hasn't mattered so far. It will come that we will have put out a decent outlay on a player and it won't work out. But we're doing a very, very good job of it so far. A very good job, a very encouraging job, to the point where it has relaxed me entirely on losing potentially any players. Don't get me wrong, the guys I listed earlier, such as Kyogo, Jota, Hatate, Carter Vickers, I don't want to lose any of them ever, to be honest, because they will be very difficult to replace. That's when we'll truly find out what's going on, when we go to replace a proper key player.
That's what I was aiming at there, yeah.
Because we can replace these guys plenty, right? We can replace Juranovic, which we've already done, Yakimakis, which early signs are good from all that we've already replaced
He's coming
him.
on and scoring.
Yeah, we can replace Abada, but can you replace Kyogo, Carter Vickers, Hatate? Joe Hart will need to replace soon, but he's a big figure in there. That's when we'll find out if this new policy is properly working.
Speaking of Kyogo and Hatate, they were sort of overlooked for international duty again, and the manager was coming out, said he takes a lot of things into consideration, but the headline that was picked up upon, obviously, was the fact that he's playing they're both playing in the Scottish League. How much do you think genuinely that affects international? Because international managers surely should be able to look at things the way club managers do and go, he's a good player. Because, so Southampton have saw Abada and went, right, he's going to be good enough for us to join us in the summer. Then to me, it'd be inconceivable that the Israeli manager may look at Abada and go, no good enough for Israel until he gets that move to Southampton in the summer, because they're just as good. I mean, for me, there's no denying that Hatate is a tremendous midfielder. And I know you guys were having a look through where the rest of the Japanese squad play. I think, Stephen, you pointed out before we turned the cameras on that they all play for top 5 leagues, which is fine. But for me, Hatate would slot into any team in a top 5 league. Easy.
Well, I suppose that Hatate just finds himself the outlier there in that he's not. Yeah, you could make the case that he's better than all of them and he would slot into the teams that they're playing for. I've no doubt about that, but they're already playing for them, so that's where Hatate finds himself in a difficult position already at 25. And we've had the discussion about how he's quite young in terms of experience, in terms of first team experience, professional football. He's only been going 3 years or something. He's found himself at 25 with 1 cap for Japan, I think, and everyone else around him is far more experienced and all playing, not at bigger clubs, but they're all playing for middling clubs at undeniably a higher level. So even if you're at, I think there's a couple at Freiburg and Eintracht Frankfurt, Kamada and all that, Brighton, they're all playing at decent levels. I understand the Hatate one more than Kyogo, if I'm honest, because I look at their midfield and I think Rolat Matoma has burst through at Brighton, looks an absolute superstar. He might just be that he's come a cropper against that. They're coming through, emerging onto the scene at the same time, and he's just marginally better. That might just be the case for Hatate. But Kyogo, I just cannot understand at all, particularly when Daisen Maeda is a regular for the same manager.
In the same league.
Yeah, and this isn't a dig at Daisen at all. We're all huge fans of him here, but we can look at it and think, well, if you really need a guy who can perform that task that Daisen does extremely well, don't get me wrong, could you not basically sort of augment it, adapt it slightly so that Kyogo could do it, because Kyogo's far more likely to get you goals within that as well. But it's not up to us. I just find it disappointing because I want my players involved in international level. So does Ange. He's said that as well. I know a lot of people look at it from the point of view that good they don't get injured, good they don't need to travel to Japan, good they don't need to travel to Australia, whatever they're playing these international games, right? I don't look at it like that. I think it'd be great to have these guys involved because it makes for a more contented environment for these players to be in, because if I don't think this is the case, and we can have this chat, but if they are for a single second start to think that I'm never going to get in the Japan team as long as I'm in this dive, then that's when it becomes a problem.
Well, that's kind of where it doesn't make sense for me, because he's already picked one player from this league and going, I've not picked those two because of the league they play in, and you think, well, admittedly, Daisen Maeda, you could make the argument, could you not, Millie, that he is a very specific player. I've not seen a football player that does the things Daisen Maeda does. I'm just not aware of one. And any manager would probably want a Daisen Maeda in his team, like the closing down, the work rate. Just get him in the team because he causes so many problems for other people that you kind of need to have him. But you can't deny Kyogo's goal scoring ability. You can't deny Ryo Hatate's easily the best midfielder in the league. Mate, there's an argument he's probably the best player in this league.
I really don't get it, because if you're watching Daisen Maeda do his stuff, you're going, oh, he's really good, man. I know where I can fit him in my team. And he's playing out wide. And the striker who's playing up top is also Japanese and banging in the goals. We'll just play the two of them.
Yeah.
So it seems simple, but I don't know are we just falling foul of the fact that if you're picking a sort of Scotland team, you go, right, they're the best players, out with that. Whereas Japan have got a lot of good players.
Yeah.
An awful lot of good players. And they said, look, they're not picked this time, but they might be next time. So I don't think it's a massive thing. I think there's a couple of uncapped players. There's a guy in there who plays for Stuttgart who are bottom of the German league. So it's not as if, like, oh, he's playing in Germany, but he's not bottom of the league.
You just don't want it to catch on, do you? You don't want it to become this perception, because
no, that's
the
why the
perception is a
Maeda
lot.
thing's so weird, isn't it? Because you're like, right, okay, Maeda's brilliant, but the guy is the top goal scorer in Scotland, is in the same team as him, and Kyogo's playing for the middle, Maeda's playing out wide, so it is strange.
Because it's something that's come up before. Is HAKSABANOVIC's international manager not made comment about the fact that he's not playing enough, and
These international managers need to wrap it.
That's
Doesn't
it.
it? Get a lot
That's
to
it.
Stuff
say
that goes
for
back
themselves.
years, doesn't it? So I remember, was it Adam Matthews who had some chat about that as well. Gary Hooper left the league because he wanted to fulfil his England dream and all that. So,
Womp
that's unfortunate, Gary. But seeing the interest of balance, see these quotes, I have only read them. I appreciate that you're probably dealing with some translation issues. The standard of the league only formed part of what the manager said and has been reported on as having been said. What he said was that they take in a lot of factors, including the standard of the league and others. I think we might possibly, I can't speak with any authority on this because, again, there are probably translation issues, but we in Scotland, as we've just detailed with many examples stretching back years, are a little bit sensitive to this. It's the standard of the league stuff because we deal with this all the time, day in, day out. For the Gibbons and TalkSport talking about how it's a farmers league.
Yeah,
Can you have a go at them when we're talking here every week?
Yeah, exactly.
Gibbons, Melly.
We're allowed to. This is our shit.
I know, come on.
But, we get this stuff all the time, and we are defensive towards Scottish football. So we've probably latched onto that part of what the Japan manager has said, rather than taking it into account that he's probably. There's many more factors than that. I don't really believe for a second that he's just gone like, they're really good players. I've seen them before. They've instantly become terrible the minute they set foot in Scotland, so I'm never going to pick them again. I think that's probably oversimplifying things. I think that he's probably just taking it into account that there are players playing in better leagues currently, and that's maybe what we've kind of latched onto us. It's still not great. The end result is the same. They have been overlooked again, which is unfortunate. But
you just don't want it. I just don't want it becoming the perception of the Scottish League. You don't want players starting to go like players who've got a fledgling international career, Melly, and you know the conversations happening between agents and international managers, and people saying, "Look, I've got an offer here for lower league Premier League team or a championship team. I've got a team in the championship that wants to buy me. I've got a team in Glasgow, Celtic, they want to buy me. Better option, big, blah, blah. And you don't want the conversation to go, well, you know, you're running a risk moving to Scotland, your international career, you know, you're running a risk and people not really paying attention to you out there.
No, you don't want that to happen. That's why I'm the same as Stephen. I want these guys representing their country. It's brilliant watching Maeda playing for Japan, but as well with Japan, they're very successful. They qualify for tournaments regularly. They go far in tournaments regularly. So the manager's not doing a bad job. Even like, remember the Jordan Rose was banging in goals and I was like getting playing for Scotland. Gordon Strachan just didn't fancy him. Yeah. Some managers just think.
Completely forgot that boy existed until you just mentioned him there.
Perennially linked to Celtic, wasn't he? Jordan Rhodes.
Some managers just think, I've got somebody different that does the job I want them to do, and if that's not Kyogo, then that's fine. I don't agree with it, but that's it.
A final thing on Hatate and what I've just said about the various factors that might feature into or figure into the Japan manager's thinking on these things. It is still something to keep an eye on, as you put it, Jamie, is that if Reo Hatate, 25 years old, thinks I can never there's nothing I can do to get into this Japan team.
Me here.
Look how good I am in this league and I can't get near it. If we assume that the Japan manager is figuring in several things, but what if all of them are stripped away and the last remaining thing is I'm still playing in Scotland and I can't get into this league? That's when it becomes a concern here, because the way Reo Hatate is playing and has played this season, he can't possibly he can't do any more. He
No.
cannot perform any higher than he
we
has.
are not helping, are we, by persistently coming on this podcast week in, week out with our millions of viewers and listeners shaming how bad the rest of the Scottish League is. Because, I mean, are we contradicting ourselves here a wee bit? We sit here every week going, all these teams are rubbish, all these players are rubbish, all these managers are rubbish. Then when an international manager goes, I just ease up about me no picking your players.
Aye, massively. Massive hypocrites, yeah.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have the best tools for some spring cleaning in your pants. Trust me, your confidence will be blooming like the flowers. Look your best this spring and join 8 million other men who trust Manscaped. Use code TIMS to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com.
The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is just a ball sack trimmer that provides their proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. This trimmer is designed to trim hair on loose skin. Although your balls might look like punching bags, don't treat them like one. The Lawnmower 4.0 also waterproof and equipped with an LED light so you can trim in the dark or the shower. Have you ever met
Needless risk there, I think.
Have you ever met someone who finds nose hairs attractive? The Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps reduce nicks, snags and tugs in those delicate nose and ear holes.
Save 20% off and free shipping with code TIMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS, TIMS, at manscaped.com. Your balls, thank you. Sort of a weird situation happened between, it was completely needless as well, between Celtic, Scotland, Ange, Steve Clarke, Greg Taylor. So Steve Clarke said, the reason I didn't pick Greg Taylor was because he's got a few injury issues that Celtic want to take care of, and Celtic came out and went, no, he's fit enough to play.
Yeah.
And you sort of look at that situation, Melly, and you go, is it okay just to say there's two fantastic left backs already here, and unfortunately for Greg, he's sort of come along at the wrong time?
Yeah, as well, Aaron Hickey's there and he can play left back as well. So it's another guy playing in a very, very good league. And the way Steve Clarke plays, I don't know if he's going to stay with a back four or go with a back three. So where does Greg Taylor fit into that? He's not a wing back, is he? And he's maybe not a left there back three. So just,
I mean, he deserves the call up. Another time, if there was injuries, there's no denying that he's a good enough player. He deserves a call up.
When I was at the last Scotland games in the summer, he played in that. So it's not as if he hasn't been called up. It's just, well, there's better players than him. What can you do there? And I don't think it's too harsh to say that Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson are better players than him. He's another one. What else can he do?
Yeah.
He's performing for Celtic. He's performing in the Champions League. He's performed very well when he's played for Scotland. And the last game I was at, I realised again, like, Greg Taylor's played well for Celtic moving inside, but when he was asked to play on the outside as a fullback, he was just as good for Scotland. So he's just a good player. It's just a shame there's two players better than him.
Clark likes Taylor as well. Yep. Clark had him at Kilmarnock. Yeah, exactly, and has picked him a couple of times for Scotland. So it's not.
Is that maybe why he's sugarcoating this?
Maybe. He's tried to spare feelings. But again, I think we would all broadly be okay with the idea that if he just came out and said, "Look, I don't need 4 left backs in the squad."
We can take it.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need 4 left backs in the squad. And Greg Taylor on this occasion has just suffered because it's odd for that to be played out in the press and for Greg Taylor to turn up in the Celtic team as usual. It's a very strange situation. I think could have been avoided, I think.
I mean, we sit here and we're talking down the Scottish League, and it seems like sometimes that the Scottish League's on self-destruct mode. You know, they're just trying to drag it down as much as they can internally. And I think the latest episode of that is this spat between Rangers and Celtic about locking the fans out. So
again,
it's funny, we do a podcast on patreon.com, which I've actually not plugged yet. Patreon.com/20minute-tims for extra podcasts, writing and videos. And we have every fortnight the Friday phone-in where people can ask us questions. And someone wrote in a comical question, I think it was the last Friday phone-in, saying, what would happen if, in this theoretical scenario, Celtic and Rangers didn't allow any away fans and everyone was given the chance to showcase the best crowd experience
at night as well, under the lights. Yeah.
And we were saying, that'd be good if it happened, but it's never likely to happen. And lo and behold, a couple of days later, this story comes out, and as I understand it, Celtic have been pretty unhappy with the 700 allocation that we get. They're not happy with the crowd experience, the long waits to get in, the long waits to get out, and they're not happy with, you know, the crowd safety. You speak to anyone that's managed to get a ticket for these games, they all tell you stories about bottles and debris raining down on them for most of the game. It's just not an ideal scenario. So Celtic wanted a return to a larger or the existing allocation. Rangers have basically knocked that out of the park, said it's not happening. Celtic, I think, told them, well, we're not taking the 700, and then Rangers decided not to take the 700, or at Celtic Park, however many they got, whatever the case may be. Question, Melly, do you want to return to full allocation?
Yeah.
Stephen?
I think I know there have been strong arguments on both sides for it, but I'd prefer to see it back.
I'm going to go back to Melly just because he only got to say yes, and I did come off very quickly.
Which is why you don't ask for one word answers on a podcast ever.
Melly, please elaborate.
I just think it makes for a better spectacle.
Thank you, Steve.
Scottish football, I keep saying it's slowly killing itself, and this is just another nail in the coffin for it. The so-called a derby that is widely considered to be one of the best in the world, yet we can't get fans in there, and it's not because of trouble or anything like that. There's been no big issues there.
No, it's because, just in case you've been living under a rock, it's because Rangers got so sick of seeing us celebrate at Ibrox that they decided to cut our allocation down, sell those season tickets to fans so fans could watch Rangers do things. Obviously in the hope that the money would help them win the league, and then the one league they did win, the fans weren't in those seats to see it because COVID happened. So Rangers have had precisely zero benefit from this ridiculous thing, this action of killing the spectacle.
Yeah, and it's killing the spectacle from a neutral's point of view, but also from a fan's point of view as well. I think we're so telling people that it's the best derby in the world. Well, how come there's no away fans there?
Yeah.
That doesn't make for a good spectacle. If I was Sky Sports as well, I would be like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Yes, it'll be a good atmosphere on one side, but it kind of it favours the home team so much that are these games going to be pretty redundant? It could end up that most likely Celtic will win 2 home games, Rangers might win 2 home games, or there'll be a draw in there. So you're looking at, it doesn't really have an effect on the league too much, and if we're going to be calling this the best derby in the world, you need that. And there's nothing better as a home fan when your team score, giving it absolutely stinking to the away fans. But just as important as that is, growing up as a Celtic fan or even a Rangers fan, the best times are going to the away ground of your biggest rivals and winning, and only a select few get to experience that anymore. People should get to experience that. It's not how it should be. I'm sick of being locked out of stadiums because you can't get tickets for there being seats there, but they won't give them up. And now Rangers are doing the same thing. They don't do it when European teams come. They can give Celtic that European allocation, no bother. They're just a petty club.
We don't have much in this Scottish League of ours, Stephen, but what we did have was the spectacle of the Glasgow Derby.
Yeah, and I said years ago, or when this first came around, that basically Rangers were passing up their claim to being part of something that was bigger than both the clubs combined, because at the time that this came around, they weren't a match for Celtic on the pitch. So the one thing they could do was still be part of, as Melly has said, the biggest derby in the world and all this.
Behind the banners and all that.
Yeah, for the club that drones on about this Old Firm stuff and all that, Old Firm banners and their wee archways and all that sort of stuff, for them to put another nail in the coffin for anything that used to be any kind of spectacle of a derby is fairly short-sighted, in my opinion, and I don't really know how or if we can possibly fix this now.
I don't think they can, because I understand that Rangers have sold season tickets in these seats.
Yeah, well,
so unless they do the European allocation thing, which I don't think they want to do, they're not inclined to do that, there's just no going back.
Nah, and I've enjoyed a little bit of love for Odsonne Edouard this week, because the memes have been plentiful. The people have pinpointed the substituting on of Odsonne Edouard at Ibrox when he scored that goal as the moment that it broke forever. It killed the derby as a spectacle.
Remember they put security guards on the post so Leaguers couldn't tie the flag around it?
Staunch one with the football.
What's the security guard going to do? Attack a Celtic player?
Can't believe Lee Griffiths gave up as well. He should have found a way to get the scarf on the crossbar or something.
So petty.
And it's one of the most risible sights in Scotland. There's been a few over the years, but security guards on a post was just laughable stuff. Was that the game? In fact, it was, because we were at it. We were at that Ibrox game where Edward scored and Griffiths was up behind us with a flag.
Yeah.
Oh, the good old days.
But what's wrong with this?
I know.
There's so much stuff that we don't like in Scottish football, right? And there's so much nasty stuff that you don't really want to bring up with the bigotry and all that sort of stuff. But really, everything that happened at these Glasgow derbies, right, was on the pitch, ostensibly on the pitch with Griffiths and all the stuff that Rangers reportedly didn't like. And it was all just fun. It was all just good-natured fun.
At least should have been.
At least should have been. But as I say, it's like they're so desperate, as you say, Stephen, to cling on to this Old Firm tag while simultaneously chipping away everything that the league is and the Old Firm is, and we've been left with just Rangers fans at Ibrox and just Celtic fans at Celtic Park, which I'm sure lots of Celtic fans will be happy about it, because they'll get there'll be extra tickets available for
That's a
people
good point,
who haven't gone to a Glasgow derby.
Yeah.
That will allow people to experience that and enjoy it. And it's a strange move for Rangers, a team who need to be gaining ground on us, to not want away fans in their stadium, in our stadium. Very, very strange. Melly. Sorry. I saw you wave.
Stop eating butter before the record.
Yeah, but we're still paying the price for something that happened 30 odd years ago, that we can't have drink at the game, and now we're paying the price for nothing the fans have done here.
Yeah.
It's nothing the fans have done here. It's a club raging that they're getting pumped at their home stadium all the time. So you're looking at it going to Ibrox should be something you look forward to and do. It shouldn't be you're in with 700 people fearful for your safety.
Yeah.
When we're looking at it now, where derbies all over the world, some of them don't have away fans because it's too dangerous. There's not been an incident to do with the fans that's caused this. It's just, please stop beating us. And I get tired of this. We can't drink at football for something that your grandparents or generations ago caused this, and we're still paying for that. How long are people going to pay
Thanks,
for
Grandad.
But how long are people going to be, but Celtic fans going to be saying, what, in 20, 30 years, cheers odds and Edward?
Yeah,
doesn't make sense.
I just don't see a way of it ever going back, because it would mean the only way you're really going to get it back is regime change at Rangers, because it's ostensibly it's up to them. It's up to them to play ball here.
What we find is that traditionally don't really do that, do they?
No.
I mean, in recent seasons, they've basically kind of fought back against everything, from sponsors to when they all cinched tobacco. Remember the blank space behind Giovanni Van Bronckhorst for interviews and
Black
all that.
tape over it.
So if we're holding our breaths for Rangers to be the quote-unquote bigger person here, then I wouldn't advise that, because you're going to be going purple very, very soon, to be perfectly honest. No, I'm not. I mean, jokes aside, it's pathetic and it's sad, and I don't see any way back for it, because as you say, we've taken steps now that it almost can't be. We've salted the earth of this now, and we can't really find a way back anytime soon. So what we're hoping is that season tickets now dwindle so we can try and squeeze in it's never going to happen.
What's kind of annoying to me is there are no other leagues and teams in this league that could take Rangers' place, because in an ideal world, you would say to Rangers, you don't want to be part of this spectacle anymore. Hey, Hibs, do you want a full stand? And you give us two. Yeah. And then you turn that into the spectacle, and then Rangers fans start to go, well, hold on, that looks good. But Hearts can't do it because they don't have the fans. Hibs can't do it. So in an ideal world, I would want to be that petty that you'd phone up Hearts and go, all right, you can have that whole Rangers end.
We have had a wave supports in the ground recently where you could literally count it. Yeah. We sit in the halfway line, you could honestly point at everything. You could get, there's 37 of them. Yeah. So I don't see that.
That's not to say they're not big clubs though, Stephen, because the number of fans you have doesn't indicate whether or not you're a big club according to David Martindale.
Literally the only indication.
Yeah. What else does it mean?
It was
whatever it means doesn't apply to Livingston.
No. It was Livingston. We could sit and count them. Then Greenock Morton come and fill a stand. And to be fair to Hibs, I thought the atmosphere at the weekend was good, because Hibs did bring a very big support, and once they got a goal ahead, they had something to hang on to. So there was a bit of needle between the two fans there, and that's because Hibs sort of went round a bit. So if we can get Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeen selling out decent allocations, it does make it better as a spectacle for the home fans as well, in my opinion, because if there's more fans there to lambast when your team win, it's like Hearts.
That's all Melly wants. He just wants more people there to shout at.
Well, this man here giving Lee Johnson the finger at the weekend.
Not my finest moment.
But you get that elation when you score against your rival, and then you turn to their fans as well. It's what football rivalry is all about. And if you've got more fans from away teams in the stadium, then it makes for a better spectacle. Hearts and Hibs have both went up recently at Celtic Park, and it lifts the home crowd because there's something to go against there. And just never going to happen now.
Stephen,
bloody outing me for my antisocial behaviour.
Why
the police at my door next?
Why did you stick the finger up at Lee Johnson?
Right, okay.
Was it his turtleneck? Milk tray man.
Got a bit looking like Dapper laughs. Right, the game itself, because this will sort of lead towards my reaction, my admittedly ugly reaction to how well I think it was O's goal going in. Right, Celtic are brilliant, right? Yeah. Celtic are a very, very good football team, and I've had it said to me, I've had it sort of reaffirmed to me by a neutral recently that, look, don't take it personally. This is a compliment. This is all that teams think they can do to try and get something out of Celtic. It's the time waste. It's to try and ruin the game as a whole. Right?
Yeah.
Hibs completely ruined the first half of that game. Completely ruined it by staying down, time wasting. Somebody took his boot off for no reason at one point. There was all sorts going on to the point where we had 8 minutes of injury time added to the first half alone. 15 minutes in total, right? That's fine. I respect that. I accept it, right? We are a very good team. It might take some dark arts to try and disrupt Celtic. However, I do reserve the right to issue a get it up you if that doesn't work.
Yes.
And that's all I was doing. That's all I was doing.
You say dark arts, that makes it sound like underhand and sneaky and a bit like a Pirlo foul or something, or we tug at the dark arts, not their manager just booting another ball onto the pitch to waste precious more seconds. I mean, it's not very cerebral, that, is it?
There was one funny moment in the first half where Kyogo gets so sick of David Marshall taking so long at his goal kicks that he went and got the ball for him.
Yeah.
Kindly wee Kyogo, right? Picked up the ball for him, placed it. One of their players, not the keeper, one of their players ran over, picked up the ball and put it somewhere else, just so Kyogo didn't have that tiny win of being able to place the ball for him and wasting 0.6 of a second walking to the other side of the box.
This is something that has been creeping in over the last couple of months. We've noticed it getting worse and worse, but I mean, Hibs were pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and David Marshall as well. I thought, a good Celtic man, but he's got a job to do, doesn't he? But some of the... I think the 6 I was speaking to a ref recently, and the 6-second rule does still apply, but just nobody takes any notice of it. It was ages he was having on the ball, ready to boot it. Their right back flung himself to the ground at one point. Miller, and he had a disastrous game, man. And what was that? Was it Fish, their centre half?
Yes.
There was one moment where I was raging, and Stephen, he sits in front of me and he just went, oh, for fuck's sake. Not because Celtic gave the ball away, because Hibs had a free kick in the half and just punted it straight out the pitch. It's like, what is going on here? He had the ball. So Hibs weren't great, but it just felt difficult for Celtic to break them down. And if that's the only way they're going to do it, then I understand you're down to 10 men after the sending off. But I mean, the other one was the Celtic had a throw in, the ball bounced back on the pitch, it was coming towards a guy, all he had to do was chest it and grab it and throw it back. He moved out the way of the ball.
Jumped out the way of the ball.
Yeah, come on lads, but they get their comeuppance at the end. If they hadn't been so time wasting, it may only ended up 2-1 and we wouldn't have had 5 minutes at the end where HAKSABANOVIC can score.
Merely mentioned the red card, it's fair enough.
The first one I think was a fairly clear booking, just left a little bit on Starfelt.
Not according to Richard Foster.
No, I think Richard Foster said that Starfelt knows what he's doing. He's stayed down long enough to get him the booking, because that's what determines booking, the length of time on the ground.
He's not just Scotland's best dressed man, Richard Foster, he's also our dumbest pundit.
Yeah, he is. Don't call him Ricky, whatever he does. He's intelligent now. He is Richard, Mr. Richard Foster.
One of the best bits of football pattern ever is when he fell out with a fan whilst playing for Partick Thistle and said to the fan, "I'm not taking that by a Partick Thistle fan. You're a Partick Thistle player, Richard."
The bookings, I think the first one was fairly clear. It looked like a genuine attempt to block Starfelt. Starfelt was trying to pass it back to Hart from memory, I think, at the time. Tried to cut off that pass, left a wee bit on him. It looked as if he maybe studded him on the top of the foot. Nothing major, but fairly clear booking just with the way it went in. The second one, which is the high boot on Cameron Carter-Vickers, I'm 50-50 with this one. It's not an injustice. It's not an outright robbery, because he did kick him in the head. I think that's fairly inarguable. I think if you're going to go to the letter of the law, which is a weird phrase because we shouldn't really be talking about the letter of the law. It's a rule.
Yes.
But we often talk about this, the letter of the law, as if it's something different to the rule. But if you're going to enforce the rules, he has kicked Cameron Carter-Vickers in the head. However, I wouldn't have been that bothered had they just let that one go. A foul, yeah, but I don't know if the second booking was necessary. Yes, he kicked him, but when you actually look at the incident, Cameron Carter-Vickers kind of pulls him over to get to the ball and dives towards the ball as well. Yeah. So Cameron Carter-Vickers is not standing and he's not leaning either. He's kind of launched himself forward, and in the act of pulling him over, Hyeon has gone for the ball, which he probably shouldn't have done. And again, that's why he's probably been booked for it. Personally, I wouldn't have had much of a problem if we'd just given him a warning for that or just given the free kick and let it go. But that said, it's not an injustice. It's a perfectly reasonable booking as well.
Would have been reasonable if he had just stopped play instantly and booked him and sent him off, because Carter Vickers get kicked in the head, but he sort of done a play on it, and the players are all looking at him going, he's being booted in the head. So the ref, and then he goes back and books him. If it was a booking like that straight away, and it's a kick in the head, you stop the game instantly. There was a few decisions from, well, more than a few from the referee.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of his performance overall. That was my next question, but you've stumbled upon it. So
scatty, I'd say, a bit all over the place, and it's the same every week. But isn't it? No matter what referee it is, no matter what game it is, and it's not just decisions going against Celtic. Hibs could be aggrieved at a couple of decisions as well.
I mean, they're Dundee United. I mean, the temperature is getting turned up under the referees and VAR. And I hate to say we told you so. In fact, Stephen said it on the podcast a couple of times. But you know, it started with Celtic and but it affects everyone. We're all working with these same referees, and now everyone's moaning about it, and you're expecting support and sympathy. I mean, it played out exactly as we all thought it would.
Yeah. To reiterate, don't just focus on the fact that we are Celtic fans complaining about the refs
and the manager, Celtic manager. Was
exactly. Don't focus on that, because too easily it is turned into a narrative of entitled old firm fans and all that, always moaning. You will get it as well.
Yeah.
Believe us, it's the same people who are going to be in charge of your games, and you will eventually. So if we could all focus the attention on where it deserves to be, on the refs, then that would be most helpful. I think
it's not Celtic, but did you see the penalty awarded against Dundee United for the dive?
Yeah, there was a handball as well in the Kilmarnock game as well. Unbelievable.
It's everywhere. In fact, I think Ali McCoist from TalkSport and A Shot at Glory.
One of said Gibbons.
Yeah, one of said Gibbons from A Shot at Glory and TalkSport and whatever else he's done.
What a CV.
I know. He said it's time to bin VAR. And as much as I don't really pay much attention to what Ali McCoy says most of the time, I do think that is exactly the sort of comment that might send shivers up the SFA's spine a wee bit, because sometimes all it takes is just one person to say maybe we should bin this, and then other managers might start to go, well, do you know what, maybe we do need a review of it.
We don't. We need competent people using it.
Yes.
VAR is used. We cannot tell people that Scottish football's not as bad as you think. If we have technology that shows you the correct decision and you can't make it, that's not the technology's fault. That's your fault for not making the decision. We said this all along. What do you think is going to happen with VAR? I think it's going to come in and it's going to be a disaster, not because of VAR, but because of the people making the decisions. They can't make decisions off their own back that are correct. They get them severely wrong. Now when they're having replays, they can't even get them right because they don't know what they're doing. It's not about binning VAR. It's about binning the refs and getting competent ones in. Yeah, another sort of weird analogy that we've sort of used before as well with the air traffic control as well. But this would be like getting rid of VAR would be like if a guy just kept crashing trains or something like that, right? It'd be like, you've done it again 3 times this week. You've crashed a train. What we need to do is get rid of all these trains. In fact, pull up all the tracks and all that as well. We're not sacking you.
And we're just not driving trains anymore.
We're starting everything again. Pull down all the wires, pull up all the tracks. There's something no quite right here. This guy keeps crashing trains, and it's definitely not his fault.
I saw Hugh Keevins have a go at Carl Starfelt as he normally does. I think people still got a bee in their bonnet about Starfelt.
He had a good weekend, Keevins, didn't he?
Yeah. Do you think Starfelt had a good weekend though? I mean, the penalty was fair enough. That's stonewall. Absolutely stonewall. I think, Joe, I think he had a good game to that point. I was all ready to come away from that game. Having not seen a replay, I didn't know what the penalty was given for because we don't get the benefit of any information when you're at a game. Right? Weird, that.
I know. So I didn't know what that's what it had been given for until Melly got a message a wee bit further on, and it was fairly clear that it was a penalty. But I was ready to come away from that game thinking he'd played quite well. And Carter Vickers was immense again, by the way. Yeah. See, even if we don't go past that sentence, I just want it to have been said. He was absolutely tremendous again.
All 6'3" of him.
6'3", yeah, according to Lee Johnson. That's right. 6'3", and he turned into 5 foot when he was heading up. But Starfelt, it was a daft decision. You can't do that. You can't do it. You can't. In the age of VAR, that is going to be seen, and I don't know why. You would think it's like a lack of experience, but if anything, that's almost too much experience. Yeah. Too much experience of life pre-VAR, when you could basically do that. You could do things like that. Maybe try a couple of dirty tricks in the box. You can't do it now because it will be seen and you will concede the penalty because it's so obvious. There's no hidden way you can get away with just pulling somebody's jersey. The guy was going nowhere as well. He was just going towards the ball. He would probably get a flick on at best. The guy in front of him looked as if it covered fairly well. At worst, you're basically just going to have a 50-50 aerial clash in the air that you can tidy up on the next one. Don't concede a penalty in that situation.
It's stupid, and it's one of the things where we try to defend Starfelt a lot here. He doesn't make many mistakes, but with them, can he defend that? You can't defend that. And if we're looking at Celtic and going, we've got a good team, where can we improve? Mistakes like that are where you go, right, maybe we can get better than Starfelt, because he is, 28 maybe now, coming up for 28. If he's still doing that at that age, an international player, he's played in good leagues and he's playing in a good Celtic team, he makes rash decisions sometimes. And yes, he is playing it alongside Carter Vickers, who is utterly immense, and he is probably the best defender I've seen at Celtic, but that doesn't mean it gives you the right to just make these mistakes that you shouldn't be making. You quite simply shouldn't be making. If you're going to be awkward on the ball and make awkward passes, I don't think you're going to change that in him, but you can't be adding this into the game as well and giving away penalties when that could cost Celtic in a massive game sometimes. That was against 10 men. There was no danger there, and you've done that. It's very, very silly.
You notice we're being a lot harsher on Starfelt in recent weeks.
Yes.
Wonder why that is, eh? But for what he's getting up to.
Anyway. Anyway.
Away from the pitch.
Moy and Hatate, did we miss them?
I think so, yeah. I think having one of them not there you can get away with, but having the two of them there, it makes it difficult. But O'Reilly and Turnbull, good players in their own right. The two of them in midfield together, don't know if the right blend's there, but it's difficult when teams are sitting in like that because there is no space.
Don't play together a lot as well. You know, they don't get into that rhythm, especially Turnbull and Moy. Turnbull and O'Reilly. I mean, I can't imagine they've played a lot of football together. No,
and it's a two players that are coming in, then out, and then out. Whereas Hatate and Moy, you know what you're getting from them. You know they're more likely to start, and we've said it in the last couple of weeks where it's Abada, Kobayashi when he came in, HAKSABANOVIC. You can't just come into this team and be up to speed. And when you're coming in, Turnbull, I think he tried, didn't really come off for him, but doesn't cost Celtic really. Celtic are winning these games and guys aren't playing brilliantly, but if they keep playing, they will get up to speed at some point, and I've no doubt Turnbull can be a decent player for Celtic. He did get 2 assists, but that's passes, it's not really assists, and I think decision time for Turnbull as well, and Celtic, he'll have a year left in his contract in the summer. I'd quite like to see him stay, but I can understand if he'll go, but it's a risky one, but I think there's still more to come from the guy.
I'd be surprised if he extends now, to be honest. I think he's getting to a point where he will want to play. I assume. I mean, similar.
He's good enough to play.
Yeah, he is. He's good enough to make a huge impact for somebody. I don't know who that is, but it's clear that his path at Celtic is blocked by 2, 3, in fact, immense players ahead of him for these. I mean, they're not always going to be there. We might lose Hatate, O'Reilly in future seasons.
But that's not what we want anymore, is it? Because yes, Turnbull's not playing just now. He probably is good enough to play, but the guys ahead of him are playing. But we don't want Celtic to go back to the sell a midfielder and then Turnbull starts playing. Well, he wasn't good enough when that guy that was there, like, I know you'll hate this, but it's like the Charlie Mulgrew started playing in midfield when Ledley, Kyle, all that left. It wasn't because he was a better player than those guys. It was just I know you hate it, but come on. It was just because they all left that he started playing there. He was decent, but Turnbull isn't playing for Celtic because the guys are ahead of him are good. All of a sudden he's just not become better than these players that he's going to start playing. I wouldn't mind him sticking about, but I don't want to see him playing because these guys have left.
It's the Mikey Johnson conundrum as well, isn't it? Because people think, well, there's still a player in there, but what that function is replacing Jota.
Yeah.
If Jota goes, and that's simply not on.
We are sounding quite close to the window, aren't we, of this homegrown player thing? You know what I mean?
More than close to it.
If Turnbull goes, Forrest goes, if Mikey Johnson, there's no place for Mikey Johnson at Celtic.
McCarthy might go.
McCarthy, you're just like, are we just going to start signing Scottish guys the way that English teams sign English keepers, except we're going to have them in midfield, full back? We're just going to start plucking guys out there.
It's a vicious circle, this, because we are held back in the Champions League or any potential Champions League run by signing players for the sake of them being homegrown. And likewise, we cannot get into the Champions League if we don't fill the squad with players just because they're homegrown. So again, I'll not labour the point, but it's something I'm completely against. I don't think it's fair that Celtic have to, or any team really, that aren't in the a far bigger country have to do. I don't
we have
like
to
that
be the
rule.
same quota as someone with a country 10 times the size.
I don't think it's fair that we are saddled with these duds. I'm kidding. But no, I don't think it is fair that we have to manage the squad in this way, because it holds us back, to be honest.
I thought Jota came out in that game brilliantly in the second half.
Yes, I thought he was terrible in the first half, to be honest.
I was being polite about it.
I thought he...
Same in St Mirren game, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, I very similar. It just wasn't happening for him in the first half for Jota. Overhitting crosses, poor touch, a few other mistakes. But it reminded me of something you said about him recently, Melly, about how he doesn't let the head go down.
Yeah.
The thing people always say about wingers, or it'd be easy to just look at that and go like, well, wingers are inconsistent. Oh well, they'll probably be good in the next game. But Jota doesn't do that. He doesn't just fade into the background of a game and be that sort of stereotypical inconsistent winger. I thought in the second half he showed the most desire of anyone to go out and get that game won. Maybe
mentality monster.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something you necessarily associate with a guy like Jota, because he's a flair, pretty boy flair player and all that, right? But after he took his penalty, which was terrible, by the way, no more of those, please. Yes. After he took his penalty, he made a point of basically going round most of the crowd, like Gene, everybody up and all that. He looked like he really wanted to get that game won, and it's just part of being a Celtic player. Jota embodied that against Hibs, and I'm glad it was. I'm trying to use or avoid using terms like grab the game by the scruff of the neck, because it's... What does that even mean? But I think it applies here, because he just rolled the sleeves up and all these other cliches that I'm running to the end of this sentence. I have no more cliches to add to that, so proceed.
Yeah, I think it's... I might just be making this up, but I think it's where he says Ronaldo's his idol and that, and you can see where he takes things from Ronaldo from that point of view. Like,
he does a wee chop over thing.
Yeah.
That with him.
But it's more the mentality thing where he doesn't give up, and Ronaldo's never been that. Ronaldo can be having a poor game and bag 2 goals.
Yeah,
Jota, he doesn't let the head go down. What I like about him so much as well is it doesn't affect his confidence in that he won't get the ball, try and take someone on, and then he'll go, I'll just play it safe next time. Yes, he could play it safe sometimes, but he'll try and take players on, and that's what you need from guys, because he's good enough to take these guys on. Just because he doesn't do it once doesn't mean that's him for the game, because we see players, the heads go down and that's it. But with Jota, he doesn't. He's scoring goals and doing good things for Celtic. But again, I'm just waiting for him to get back to that form of the start of the season where he was utterly unplayable. And if this Jota is still contributing massively for Celtic, and there's still more to come from him this season, that's brilliant. It's just another guy as well that is class for Celtic, absolutely brilliant. But there's nothing he can do to get in the Portugal squad, because the squad's so good. So it's just one of those ones. Would get into the English Premier League get him in the Portugal squad? I don't know if it will, but I think he's just a guy that's enjoying his football, but can enjoy it so much more. And when he does, he's going to take this league by storm again.
HAKSABANOVIC is no bad, eh?
Oh, I know.
Great option to have coming off the bench. Just comes off and scores a belter every week. Well, I could deal with that.
Yeah, we've been chatting about him a lot recently and about how he's too good to be in the position he's in the squad. So that's a concern. I don't want to get to this point next season and start hearing the rumours about HAKSABANOVIC. Been talking to his agent, and international manager has been advising him to go. What a player he is.
See on that, but as well, see with Abada, where I should be playing more. Mate, you've been here nearly 20 months. There's enough time within that. You were playing at one point, you were scoring goals. It's up to you to stay in the team. It's not up to the manager to keep picking you. And HAKSABANOVIC was player of the month in November, whatever it was, fell out, and he hasn't been able to get back in. Came on, scored a goal, got a start, didn't do well enough, comes on the next game and scores. If he gets a start now, it's up to him to stay in the team. It's not up to the manager. Come the end of the season, that's a full season he's been there. Yes, start by injury, but if he gets to next January and he's not a starter, it's nobody else's fault.
Yeah,
it's very true.
That is true, and that's the reality. Where all the players in this squad are dealing with such a strong squad. We've got good players in every position, and we can't just find minutes for guys just because we quite like them. We can make the case that we really like HAKSABANOVIC in the way that his style of play, and he is scoring goals. But
love it.
Oh, that coming in off the left hand side and just bend it. I think pretty much all of his goals have been like that so far. That's 4 or 5 goals he's got now for Celtic, and they've all been very, very similar. So he's got that particular set of skills to do that I like in a player. It could be unstoppable in that way, but got a lot of players and a lot of good players in there. Tonight alone, we've spoken about how Maeda is a very specific type of player, and you can't really replicate that with anyone else. And Jota is basically the best option for both wings. So it's a difficult spot for him to be in. However, I just want to find a way to get him into the team more often.
I think we've sort of, before we sat down and record the podcast, we were saying we want to pick out some players that we maybe don't speak about so much. And I think deserves a mention because he's another one who, so we sold Giakoumakis. Yeah, we sold Giakoumakis.
Yeah.
And we brought in O to replace him. And whilst I think Giakoumakis is the better player, towards the end of Giakoumakis' time, his function was come off the bench, get some game time, inevitably score a goal. And people were going, he scores every time he plays. Is the conversation about him starting games? There was a conversation of is he better than Kyogo? And obviously it panned out that he wasn't. But in terms of contribution, O's fulfilling that. O's coming off the bench, getting some game time and scoring. And I thought, I loved the way that he took that header. I love the way that he was forceful, aggressive, pushed the defender out the way, put his head in a difficult place and managed to get the ball in the back of the net. And he looked as if he enjoyed scoring the goal as well.
Yeah, he sure did. And he'd missed 2 before that, and he mentioned that after the game he'd missed 2, was disappointed then. Doesn't let the head go down. Well, he did let the head go down when he scored, but right down there, bullet header from a corner. You love to see it. But again, it's another player like Giakoumakis. Yes, he was a good player and all that up against Kyogo, but when the two of them were fit, Kyogo started. I don't think Giakoumakis was ever going to be the number one, and I think that's going to be the same role for as long as Kyogo's there. But if he's coming on and doing what he's doing there, brilliant. And it's another one where Celtic were not winning the game. O comes on at the same time as Kyogo, and it affects the game. They changed the game and they got the goal. So it's very good that we have Kyogo, and God forbid Kyogo gets injured, but it wouldn't be an utter disaster because we've got a guy that you go, do you know what? He can step up because he is scoring goals and he is different from Kyogo. He gives us something different. That was 3 crosses, maybe from corners, that he got on the end of, or maybe should have done better with the first 2, and then he gets the third one. Celtic don't have that with a lot of players in the box, so it's something else to add to. And nice 6-pack, mate.
O's goal was clever. I liked it because you look back at it and you think, right, he has outmuscled the defending player, which I think was the guy who scored the penalty for HIBS, whose name escapes
Campbell.
me. Yeah, that's right, Josh Campbell. O's goal was clever in that he pulled Campbell one direction and then went the other way. So as soon as he had shifted his weight, he took advantage of that and then kind of ran around the side of him just as he was kind
I think they call that ragdolling.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So he ragdolled Campbell in a very clever way. So I thought it was excellent. It wasn't just the case of just out muscling him. There's a lot of that goes on. It's one of those weird inconsistencies that we're happy with the refereeing, because that happens in the box. You wouldn't like to see the whistle blown for everything that goes on at a corner, because that's kind of part of it. It's kind of one of the accepted parts of football, the unspoken rules. So I really liked that from him, how clever it was, and the header was just excellent as well. It was one of those ones where the ball just hung in the air, and even before it reached him, I was convinced he was scoring that. It just seemed to be setting up so perfectly for him. Credit to Turnbull for that, of course. Yep. But yeah, a good goal. And I noticed a weird quirk about the commentary when O scores. Each of his 3 goals now, I think he scored 3, they've all been described as him getting off the mark. So every time he scores,
that's not how it works.
It's his first goal for Celtic. Just an odd quirk I've noticed so far.
It's in the back of the net.
Yeah, that's right.
That's normally how they go with it.
Yeah.
That was a Celtic podcast. Thank you very much for joining us on 20 Minute Tims. Subscribe. A lot of people that watch us, about half of the people that watch us on YouTube, haven't clicked that subscribe button. So if you click that would enormously help us. If you want to support what we do, if you want some extra content, videos and writing and all that sort of stuff, patreon.com/20minutetims. But most of all, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.